All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into how a simple cartography project became the center of a massive political firestorm in New York City. We're looking at this fascinating intersection of geography, culture, and municipal politics. And honestly, it's a story that proves drawing a line on a piece of paper is absolutely never a neutral act.
So, here's the big question. How could a well-intentioned guide for tourists cause such an intense public uproar? You'd think a map designed to help visitors find a good slice of pizza or some authentic baklava would be totally harmless, right? Well, in a city where identity and neighborhood borders are fiercely protected, curating a list of cultural hotspots is literally walking into a political minefield.
Okay, part one, mapping the Big Apple. To really debate why this blew up, we first have to understand the sheer impossible scale of New York City.
We're talking about over 8.8 million people. That's not just a big number, that is a sprawling, densely packed universe of different cultures. It's a massive, constantly shifting ecosystem of human migration. People from literally every corner of the globe have converged here, and they've brought their histories, their languages, and their traditions right along with them.
And this right here is the mapmaker's absolute nightmare. Across just 5 boroughs and 59 community boards, you've got over 200 distinct ethnic communities. Think about the density of that data. If you're a city cartographer trying to represent the cultural fabric of New York, you're looking at over 200 highly localized, deeply proud enclaves, all vying for recognition and visibility.
Which brings us to part 2, the World Cup passport. Because the crucial point is, what happens when you try to shrink all that massive diversity down into a pocket-sized guide?
Let's look at how this whole thing actually started. Ahead of the massive influx of tourists expected for the 2026 World Cup, NYC Tourism launched a neighborhood passport. The goal was great: encourage visitors to explore local businesses across all 5 boroughs. But to do this, they released a map that highlighted exactly 30 immigrant enclaves. Just 30 out of the 200 plus we literally just talked about.
And the moment you look at who was in and who was out, you see exactly where the spark hit the powder keg. The new map heavily featured newly recognized enclaves, places like Little Palestine, Little Egypt, and Little Senegal, but it completely wiped several of the city's oldest, most historic immigrant neighborhoods off the board. No Little Italy. The historic Irish communities like Woodlawn? Gone. Vast Jewish enclaves like Flatbush? Absent. The reaction was instant, and it was explosive.
So let's break that down in part 3, the missing neighborhoods. Who exactly felt erased by this new official tourism map?
Italian, Irish, and Jewish communities were, well, they were completely blindsided to find their historic neighborhoods missing. We're talking about foundational immigrant communities that have shaped New York's history over the last century. From the iconic Little Italy in downtown Manhattan to the Italian hubs of Belmont and Bensonhurst, Irish strongholds like Breezy Point, and heavily populated Hasidic and Sephardic areas like Williamsburg and Borough Park. And to put that into perspective, Isaac Chawa of the Sephardic Jewish Brotherhood pointed out that Flatbush, Midwood, and Gravesend alone are home to roughly 54,000 people in Jewish households. 54,000! These aren't small historical footnotes, these are massive, thriving demographics that simply didn't make the cut for those 30 slots.
On the flip side, the map definitely put a spotlight on the neighborhoods that did make it. That's part 4, the new additions.
The administration under Mayor Zoran Mandani proudly included several Muslim and African enclaves on the World Cup map. Critics were really quick to point out that this selection lined up perfectly with the mayor's campaign promises to elevate the city's growing Muslim community. So neighborhoods like Little Palestine and Bay Ridge, Little Egypt, and Little Pakistan, they were given official numbering and flags on the tourism guide.
So we are right back at the impossible task, aren't we? How on earth do you pick winners and losers in a city built entirely by immigrants? If you've only got space for 30 neighborhoods, including one community, by definition means excluding another. It basically forces the local government to rank cultural importance. And yeah, that is a guaranteed recipe for drama.
And because it's New York City, a debate about cartography quickly turns into an all-out political brawl. Let's get into part 5, the political backlash.
We saw some incredibly fierce and emotional reactions from organizations across the city. Mike Crispy from the Italian-American Civil Rights League straight up called it cultural erasure, saying Little Italy is sacred ground. For them, this wasn't just saving space on a brochure. When a neighborhood is deeply tied to your family's generational struggle, being left off the official map feels deeply, deeply personal. Facing all this mounting pressure, Mayor Mamdani stepped up to the mic, but he actually shifted the blame backward. He claimed his office just inherited a pre-existing map from former Mayor Eric Adams' administration, and that his team merely expanded upon it by adding a few more neighborhoods before publishing it for the World Cup.
Well, the previous administration fired right back. Officials from the Adams camp said, "Hold on, we never made a single exclusionary citywide map." Instead, they argued they had produced a series of standalone, hand-drawn illustrations for Immigrant Heritage Week. They basically accused Mamdani's team of taking those separate pieces and controversially squishing them into one consolidated 30-neighborhood map.
Now, to add a layer of hard demographic reality to all this political mudslinging, the city is changing. Some observers noted that historic enclaves, like Manhattan's Little Italy, have physically shrunk over the decades as newer immigrant groups, particularly from Chinatown, have moved into those streets. Which raises a really tough question. Should a map reflect historical significance or the actual real-time population living there today?
So, how do you resolve a turf war where geographical space meets fierce cultural pride? Let's look at Part 6, Redrawing the Lines.
If we trace the timeline, we can see how quickly things escalated, from the 2023 illustrations to the explosive public backlash in early July over the World Cup map release. It all culminated at a July 10th press conference. Mayor Mamdani formally addressed the outrage, admitted the map wasn't an exhaustive list, and promised to update it, specifically making sure Little Italy would make a return.
And I think this statement from the City Council really hits the nail on the head for this whole controversy. Honoring one community should never require erasing another. It perfectly captures the anxiety communities feel in rapidly changing environments. It's that underlying fear that representation is a zero-sum game, where celebrating a new community means sacrificing the legacy of the ones who came before.
Ultimately, what this explainer shows us is that a map is never just a map, and a tourist guide is never just a guide. It's a highly scrutinized reflection of who holds political power, who gets officially recognized by the government, and whose stories are prioritized. Mapgate is honestly a masterclass in the politics of visibility.
So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. As our global cities constantly evolve and demographics shift, whose history gets printed on the official page and who gets pushed into the margins? It's a question every major metropolis is going to have to answer. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.